about, and that would be power of attorney. So, a little bit more about wills to give people to call in with any questions or comments or anything that you would like to add. This is informational, it's not legal advice, just some things that I've noticed over the years that I think kind of makes sense to give consideration to. So, I'll start off by giving the number 414 444 5250. That is 414 444 5250. If you'd like to call in with any questions, any comments, any concerns. Okay, so 7 things that married couples should consider before meeting with an attorney with respect to estate planning in general, wills in particular, because that's what we were talking about last time we were here. All right, number one, what I think you should consider is what happens if one of the two spouses passes away. Are you going to leave 100% of your estate to the surviving spouse? Maybe you will. That's what a lot of people do. Sometimes people would like to take into consideration what might happen if one spouse passes away and the other spouse remarries. Usually, this is something that's considered by people who are relatively younger. Maybe there's minor children that are of the marriage, and you might want to consider reaching out to an attorney, talking through perhaps the option of creating some sort of a trust to protect your assets for your kids. Because if your spouse remarries, then that can create some challenges or issues just depending upon the dynamic. If you would like to just take into consideration the notion of leaving something for younger children, that's something that you should consider before you go and meet with an attorney to talk about a will. What if you or the other spouse passes away? Will you leave 100% of everything to your surviving spouse? Or do you want to make a separate provision, particularly if you have minor children? So, just something to consider. All right. Number two, what should happen when both of you pass away? All right. If you've got children, do you want to leave things equally to your children? So, if you have 2 children, do you want to leave 50-50? If you've got 3 children, are you going to leave one third, one third, one third? Or might there be grandchildren that you would like to consider? Again, these are things that may vary depending upon the age of your children. Are your children minors? Do you have children who are adults? Do you have some children who might be an adult and other children who are minors? You might leave your estate. You may choose to leave your estate disproportionately to your children. So it's something, again, just to consider. Number three, should you leave your estate to your kids outright? Well, what if you know that you have a son who will blow through everything as soon as he gets his hands on it? Might you want to consider putting things in a trust so that you can have a little more control, if you will, over how the assets get dispersed or how they get handled? Or maybe you have an adult child who may have a spouse that you don't trust or for whatever reason might not like, or if you think they may have some undue influence and you don't want that spouse of your adult child to have an undue influence over assets that you've worked hard your whole life for. So, again, these are things just to consider where creating a trust might be a good tool to use so that you can have a little more constructive say over how assets get dispersed. Number four, please consider before meeting with an attorney who you would like to be the executor or personal representative of your estate. Should it be your oldest child? Some people will say, oh, it's got to be my oldest child. But what if your oldest child is not your most responsible child? Maybe your youngest child is your most responsible child. Um, Maybe your oldest child lives in another state. Maybe your middle child lives right here in Wisconsin or, close to where you are. Look at those types of things and give some consideration to who you would want to be the executor of the estate. It's sometimes not good to just blindly go by birth order. People have learned that the hard way, um, by putting too much responsibility on, perhaps a child that you have that is not, good with handling these types of duties. This isn't easy stuff. Um, I mean, that's the point too, I guess, to just comment on. When these things happen, I can sit here and speak very matter of factly about it, very plainly. But what we're really talking about is the loss of a life, of a parent, sometimes a grandparent, and it can be a devastating time. People are in a grieving process. Maybe they're emotional, maybe they're depressed, maybe they're not thinking clearly. You really need to think about who can handle the pressure and the responsibility of this type of responsibility when you are considering who to name as the personal representative or the executor of your estate. Number 5, consider what you would like to do with your personal effects. Will you let your kids figure it out? Do you have specific bequests that you'd like to leave? Oh, I've got my favorite watch. I want to make sure my niece gets. My favorite watch, I'd like to make sure my nephew gets. Those are things to consider when, before you meet with an attorney, so that you can, just being prepared. These are just some things to have in mind. Now, it looks like we have a caller, so I'm going to interrupt my list and I'm going to take the caller, and see what they'd like to add to the discussion. Thank you, caller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for
And
calling.
yes, ma'am. Assalamu alaikum to you. Listening just a moment ago, you were speaking about what is it? Relegating authority to siblings, and I'm just providing a personal experience for myself. When I
Please.
was Yes, ma'am. When I think I was 17 or 18 years old when my mother became physically incapacitated. I was designated as a person who was given the authority of power of attorney because her abilities, whereas she couldn't, her mobility had became completely compromised. So she wasn't able to sign for herself and do a lot of things. So, I'm one of my youngest children. I'm one of the babies or whatever. So, and when you were talking about just because of a birth order, it does not necessarily predicate uh, that person has the capacity to be responsible, or that person will take into consideration uh, the best idea, or execute the best plan, or actually execute the idea of what their parents might want for them after they have gone. And so I was that person at a very young age. And I understand that what you're saying, it is totally relevant, and that because our people are getting older, and that a lot of our people will experience what I have already experienced. And I think that to co-sign what you have said, that just because someone is a firstborn, secondborn, or they might be a favorite, that does not necessarily mean that they would be the best person to execute the will of their forebearer.
You are absolutely
Thank you.
right. Yeah, I thank you for all of those comments. And go ahead. Was there more you wanted to add? Oh no, it looks like that was it. That was the comment. Okay. Well, you know what? I appreciate that because really you're underscoring, the point that I was making. These are difficult decisions to make, but, people's emotions can get involved with this stuff, and it is, in my opinion, always best to try to set that aside as much as you can. We're all human beings, but at the same time, just as the young gentleman, who called in. He was a younger, of the siblings, but had to step up and take that, authority, at a very young age, from what he was just telling us, in order to handle the duties. Everybody isn't built for this. So it's just something that it is not good or bad or right or wrong. It just is. So it's just something that we have to take into consideration when putting documents in place that are going to grant authority. birth order isn't necessarily the right order in terms of who you should assign duties to. And the caller exemplified that perfectly. So thank you for those comments. Um, and it's funny because that's actually point number 6 that I was just going to reiterate. It's just expanding on one of the earlier points that I made. Who should handle your money if one or both of you are incapacitated? This is where the notion of power of attorney comes into play. So he took the words right out of my mouth. I had been specifically talking about wills, and I'm going to talk about power of attorney a little bit more this morning. But this is where it kind of becomes relevant when you're looking at who is it that is the most able person to make the decisions for you, whether it's financial decisions or health decisions. And we'll talk more about that in a few moments. But who is it is in the best position to make those sorts of decisions if you're not able to make them for yourself? That is another point to consider. And number 7, I'm happy because this is the first time I've had this list, and I've started talking about this and never made it all the way through, which is why I'm leading with it today. Number 7 is, what if you have dementia or some other incapacity? Who can make healthcare decisions for you, such as withholding the feeding tube, etc., deciding other life support measures? These are things to consider, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as I segue into talking about power of attorney. These were just kind of points to make, still under the topic of wills, because sometimes you do these documents as part of an estate planning package. You may not necessarily just do a will. You might do a will and power of attorney. Just depends. Estate plans are based on the needs of the couple or the individual that presents, and whatever your special life circumstances are, you want to meet with an attorney who will work with you and tailor your estate plan to your particular needs. So, again, these were just some surface comments that I just wanted to put out there to get us thinking. And if you would like to discuss any of these topics further, you can contact me for a consultation. I'm attorney Coral Pleas, the owner of the Pleas Law Firm. The phone number is 414 247 9570. That's 414 247 9570. You can also text to that number if you don't mind. That is my preference because it's just a quicker turnaround for me to get back to people. If you text your name and a contact number and say you want a consultation for estate planning, we will offer a free consultation for you to come in and sit down, and then we can make some recommendations about how you might want to proceed. So, okay, so enough said about that. I would like to talk today a little bit about power of attorney, a little bit more in depth about power of attorney. Again, the number here is 414 444 5250. What we're doing today is not legal advice, it's just giving information, it's educational information to get people thinking, to get people talking, or, of course, calling in. Feel free to do so as I start to talk about power of attorney. Okay. So, what is a power of attorney? Power of attorney is a legal document that is provided pursuant to statute. Wisconsin is one of 26 states that has adopted the Uniform POA, Power of Attorney Act, and codified it in Chapter 244 of the Wisconsin statutes. Basically, what it does is it grants authority, okay, for someone to manage your affairs. Now, this is a very big deal, okay? People usually talk about wills before power of attorney. Even I talked about wills before talking about a power of attorney. But the reason I say that a power of attorney is a very big deal, it's because the power of attorney affects things while you are alive. So while you are here, while you are on earth, while you own assets and you have your life, you, through a power of attorney, may grant another person to have legal authority and say and control either of your person, your which means your health, your body, your physical being, or your belongings, things that you've worked hard to earn. So that's why it's a very big deal, because a power of attorney gives charge to another person while you are still here. That's what makes it such a big deal. Now, the person that is nominated to be your power of attorney is called an attorney in fact or an agent. Okay. So, attorney in fact doesn't mean that they have to be an attorney. Could be an attorney if you happen to know an attorney, but it doesn't have to be an attorney. It's just a way of describing who is this person that is in charge. There are different types of power of attorney, and I'll have time before the break to get into maybe one or two of them, but it looks like we're getting close to that time. But if we have to break, I'll come back and I'll continue. But different types of power of attorney. First is there's one called a limited power of attorney. Okay, now a limited power of attorney is when you need someone to do things for a limited purpose, to do something for a limited purpose. You in a limited power of attorney, you specify a date when that power of attorney is going to end. Now, I've seen it with respect to, for instance, real estate closings, deals, and you can have it with respect to that. And so you can give a person power of attorney, a limited power of attorney for one purpose for even just one day. Okay. So when we come back from break, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and the other different types of power of attorneys. And it looks like we have a caller holding. So if you don't mind holding, we'll come back and we'll take your call right after the break. Thank you. It's Money Talks with Attorney Coral, sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan. Welcome back. Money Talks with Attorney Coral. We have a caller. Thank you so much for patiently holding. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to call in and I just wanted to commend you first of all for the today's topic because it's a lot of stuff that's going on in the community, especially as far as being in the Black community. And if we don't understand it and we don't know the importance of having power of attorney and things like that, it could be quite a big mess. Like for instance, we just buried my mom's sister, and um, she didn't have a power of attorney, and she was pretty well off. And someone who doesn't even take care of her or didn't even step in once she was sick tried to step in and control everything and do things that she wanted. Well, she had already paid for a burial plot. She said, "Well, I'm just gonna burn her." It's just so I just wanted people to know that's listening. What you're teaching today is very important because then when you're in a situation, then you're like, "Oh, I can't get saved." So secondly, my question was, I know we're talking about like power of attorney, but I was in a situation where I had my house taken when I had got hit by a drunken driver. I was in Milwaukee and I was involved in a hit and run, and the person got my title in their name, and now I have no means of help. If you could give me some type of references or somebody, they said the Common Means Council that I can contact. Like certain people don't even know about that. It's called Common Means Council that you get help when you're low income for attorney if you don't have that process. So sometimes it's about knowledge that we don't have. So I'm in a situation where my house was taken and I was incapacitated and I didn't have anyone or a will or trust or any of that, a living will to say, well, if this happens to me, then X, Y, and Z needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, first, thank you for commending the topic. You're absolutely right. It's important. And I'm so glad that, you've called in and you're letting me know that it's important to talk about these things. So we'll continue to do so. Secondly, the hit and run and again, sorry that that happened to you because it had to be pretty severe based on what you've just told us. Now, I was a little confused and I didn't quite catch it. You mentioned the Common Means Council. Did I catch that? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes, it's called a Common Means Council, and I got that from the Marquette student. I wish I had the number to leave with you, so if someone else listening, they can get that. So he told me that they can help with certain. It has to be an attorney that's available for the situation you want. So I need a real estate attorney, and I don't have a lot of money because now after the hit and run, I'm stuck on disability.
Right.
So they don't have the really they don't have a so if anyone's listening out there also if they can call in and if they will I thought maybe they could do some pro bono because I've done the footwork. The guy owes me for my house. He
Mm-hmm.
took my house and got my deed. I owed him $60,000 and he just sold my house for 200 some $1,000. My son is a veteran. He said, "Mom, I'll buy your house back for you." And then when it was time for him to sell the house back, he was like, "I want full value."
Oh, wow. So he got a windfall.
Yeah, on my downfall. So if
Why?
you any attorneys or somebody that's willing to help me, because we had it like text messaging back and forth. He was like, "Melina, well, I know I kept the house a little longer than because we thought I was going to get a little better, but I stayed in the hospital bed for 4 years. So
Oh,
now I'm just back up walking, and then they never even looked for the person, and that's just a whole nother story. But if
right.
anybody's out there listening and they know any realtors that's willing to help, I have like done all the footwork. I went to Marquette students. I do have what's called unjust enrichment because when I got the property, it was kind of really bad, and then we fixed it all the way up, and then
Yes.
I got hit, and so now he didn't want to send me my house back. Okay, that's fine, but you have to pay me for fixing the property up, and I didn't even know that far. I wasn't even educated to know how to go about getting the money back that I deserve, off of the property.
Yeah, so it's interesting what you're saying too. So are you saying that because of the accident he was able to take a judgment which became a lien against your home and then he executed that lien and that's how he got your home?
No, he didn't even do a lien. The deed somehow. So my mother was not savvy. She did so in Wisconsin. I want people to know this too. In Wisconsin, when it comes to real estate, it has to be in writing. It cannot be a handshake deal. So we didn't know that. So he was really well off. He's really wealthy. I don't understand. I guess how sometimes the wicked is rich. You get more money because he's really wealthy. So what he did was he got the deed in his name by himself. So then he saved the property. So then when it was time for him to give the property back, because my son was like, "Well, I'll take a VA loan and I'll give him back." Then for some reason, he's like, "Well, I don't have to sell you the house back to what we agreed. But we never had anything in writing. It was just word of mouth. I've known this man for 20 something years, so it wasn't like it was a complete stranger. So I'm telling everyone, if you have a contract, I don't care if it's a friend, a kid, or whatever, please get things in writing. You have to get things in writing.
Right. I
So,
have to agree
yeah,
with you on that. Getting things in writing. You mentioned the through the Marquette students. So I know Marquette has like a legal clinic or something to that effect,
correct.
and that they were able to tell you about this Common Means Council. I've never heard of that, so that's something that I
Yeah.
might look into too, just in terms of a referral source. When I get people that I'm not able to help, maybe that will be a referral source to use. So I
If you
really
could, when I hang
appreciate your
up,
information.
right, when I hang up, if you can have somebody give me your email, but if someone knows, so they're, the bottom line is they're telling me that I do have a case, but I have to get the right type of lawyer, a real estate lawyer. And then a couple people I looked at from the bar association, they want like $6,000 or $7,000. I'm like, well, I can make payments, but it's just hard. You got to get things in writing. You have to, or else your life could be in shambles. Like for
Right.
instance, my cousin passed away, and she had money, and she wanted to be buried. She didn't want to be burned, and because she didn't have a living will and all that kind of stuff, they ended up burning her and cremating her, and she had money to bury herself.
Oh, that's too bad. And the thing is from what I understand, cremation is less expensive. So that person who made that decision contrary to her wishes was probably just trying to pocket the rest of the money.
And she definitely was. And that's what my aunt's doing to my mother. My aunt, my great aunt, which is my mother's sister. She passed away June  28th, and we just buried her. They froze all of the stuff, and so she came out of nowhere. We was like, "Where were you at when she was sick and lowly? She had MRSA. She went on hospice. We see none of these people, and then when she died, here everybody come out the woodwork like roaches. Oh my God,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Well, let me give you my number again because you can text me there and then, if we need to communicate by email, that's fine. But the phone number that you can call, I prefer a text, is 414-247-9570. That's 414-247-9570. That is the number for the Pleas Law Firm. And so we can talk offline and see about getting a good referral of someone that might be able to help you with this situation. I'm so glad you called in today, so thank you so much for that.
Okay, thank you so much, and I had a pleasure listening. And everybody out there, this is a good stuff. Listen in, take note, and pass it on. We have to learn to pass on the knowledge.
Right, and thank you for contributing to the conversation because you added some good points too, so thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Y'all have a blessed day.
You too. Okay, so we were talking about power of attorneys, and I was talking about limited power of attorney. Next, I would like to talk about a general power of attorney. Now, a general power of attorney is more comprehensive than the limited power of attorney. The limited power of attorney, just for review, is a short term thing. You might grant it for a day. If someone needs to sign documents on your behalf, real estate closing, I think, is the example that I gave because that's where I've seen it happen with respect to my practice. But once that deed is done, then that power of attorney, that limited power of attorney, no longer exists. The general power of attorney is more comprehensive and essentially assigns all of your powers and rights to someone else. It can be used when people don't have the time or the skills or maybe even the desire to handle some of their financial or business matters. You can choose to revoke a general power of attorney. Otherwise, it remains in effect until you either pass away or if you become incapacitated. Now, again, uses for a general power of attorney sometimes is used by people in terms of collecting debts. You can assign someone, the authority and the power to collect debts on your behalf. Um, Someone may use it to assist you with applying for government benefits, managing financial or business matters, buying, selling, or making investments on your behalf. Those are all instances where I've seen the general power of attorney utilized. So it looks like we have another caller. And so we'll go ahead and take that caller while I continue to describe the different types of power of attorney. Caller, thank you for joining us. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi. My question is, my brother passed a couple months ago, and he had a last check, and so, but they put a state of. So how what do you have to do with that? I mean, how do you? I mean, he left his life insurance and everything else, but he didn't have like a power of attorney.
Okay. Now, is this the check that you have that is made payable to the estate of your brother?
Yeah.
Were there other assets that he may have owned?
Maybe a car, but that's about it.
Okay, not a home or anything like that.
No,
Okay.
no.
And I don't want you to say like the dollar amount or his name or anything like that while we're on the air. Just generally, are you in Milwaukee County?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you to text my cell phone with your name and a callback number, so that we
Okay.
can talk about that a little bit offline. I don't want to get into giving legal advice on the air. We'll need to just establish a information about who you are and who he is, and I have to do conflicts checks and all that sort of thing, that I don't want to expose any of that while we are, over public radio. So please send me a text at 414-247-9570. um or you can call it, but I think the voicemail might be full, which is why I'm asking people to text rather than call, because I don't know if you're going to be able to leave me a message. I'm still playing catch up from last time, because I do get a lot of calls and a lot of messages. But that's something that you need a little more specific guidance and perhaps legal advice in terms of how to move forward with that. But I'd have to ask you some more questions before I could talk further. So it's not something I can help with over the air, but let's talk offline and see if I can't be of
Okay.
some support to you in terms of what to do. And I'm sorry about the loss of your brother.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You
I
have a good
will do.
day.
You
Okay,
too. Bye bye.
bye bye. Okay, so we talked about the limited power of attorney. We talked about what a general power of attorney is. Now, I'd like to talk about a durable power of attorney. This is the one I see more than others, okay? A durable power of attorney lasts even after a person becomes incapacitated, okay? Long as you're alive, even if you are incapacitated, a durable power of attorney will continue to exist. This is the one you use when your goal is to give an agent authority. An agent is just the person that you select, right? Giving that person authority to act when you can no longer act for yourself. Now, some consider this type of power of attorney to be the most powerful for that reason. So, if you become incapacitated in some way, that is the person that you've given authority to make decisions for you that are business related. Okay. Number four is called a springing power of attorney. So, this is like a durable power of attorney, but what you do is you decide the effective date for this power of attorney to take place in the future. So the way most people do it when they draft these is they say, all right, I'm going to draft this power of attorney. I'm going to name, this person as my power of attorney and this other person as my secondary power of attorney if the first person is not available. But I'm not going to make this effective until some future date. Usually, the way people do it is they say the future date is when I become incapacitated. And that's verified by one or more physicians. Okay. So, in other words, if my doctor says I'm no longer in a position to make decisions for myself, if my doctor examines me and decides, yep, that's it, this person can no longer make their own decisions, therefore now this power of attorney can kick in and become activated, um, then that's when this power of attorney can take effect. Now, I used to think, okay, that makes perfect sense, right? Because if you're able to make your own decisions, make your own business, excuse me, make your own business decisions, that you'd want to do so, unless or until, sorry guys, I gotta take just a little sip of water. Excuse me for that. Unless or until you become incapacitated, you want to make your own decisions. But the problem is that making the determination of incapacity can be tricky. If you're a senior whose cognitive abilities may be declining, maybe it's Alzheimer's, maybe it's dementia, um, you may have your good days, you may have your bad days. Dementia is typically gradual. You can be sharp as a tack one day. You can, maybe that's the day you go to your doctor's appointment and your doctor is examining you and they're saying, no, she knows what day it is. She knows what year it is. She knows who's president. She knows her way here. She knows how to get home, and whatever other factors they may take into consideration. I'm oversimplifying it because obviously I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but whatever tests they give and examinations they do in order to determine your capacity or incapacity, maybe you're having a great day and you're able to answer and fire off all of these things. But you might go home the next day and not know substantive things, not know where you live, or if you go to the store you may not know how to get back home. Substantive things can go missing in your psyche, and sometimes seniors get confused and become easy prey for scammers. um, my mom is very elderly, and normally she's sharp, but she has some days where um, the phone will ring and these scammers are calling and they're trying to get her to disclose her social security number or to try to get her to disclose her bank account number. They'll ask her, oh, don't you bank at, we're trying to see where you bank. And, she'll start talking to people. She's, the phone rings. She wants to talk. She's just sitting there. So she'll start talking, but they know how to ask questions and try to get you to disclose routing numbers and checking account numbers and social security numbers. And once people have those things, they can rob you blind, right? So you got to be careful about that. Um, Fortunately, for the most part, she's smart. She'll tell them, okay, no, I won't answer your questions. Because what they'll sometimes do is tell her she won a whole lot of money. People will call and say anything just to get you talking. But I tell her, if anybody calls and they're asking you about any confidential information or claiming that you won some money, tell them your daughter is an attorney, that you're going to take their name and their number, and that I will return their call and address their questions. Usually, what they do is they hang up on her right then and there, right? But to the times that they've actually given her a name or a number to call back, when I call those numbers back, they're never in service. So it's a scam. So you got to be careful and not prideful when it comes to putting a power of attorney document in place. There's an attorney that I know that goes so far as to advise against these springing power of attorneys, the ones that have an effective date sometime in the future. Her opinion is that you're better to just do a durable power of attorney right out of the gate. You either trust that son or daughter or you don't, right? You're going to give them this power of attorney or you're not going to give it to them. It forces the conversation up front. You either trust that person or not. And then you have to ask yourself the question, is this the right person to be my agent? It forces those thoughts and it forces that conversation to take place early on. So it's just something to think about. I haven't gone so far in my practice as to advise against the springing power of attorney, but it is something to give some consideration to when you're trying to decide, do you want to do a durable or do you want to do a springing? You want it to be that bold power of attorney where this person can make those decisions for you, but do you want to grant that authority sooner or do you want to grant that authority later? Okay. So it looks like we have a caller that's on hold. I appreciate the call. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, very quickly, Ms. Cora. Good morning to you. Good morning, Mr. Rideout. Good morning, Milwaukee. Tyrone W. speaking.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am. On my sister's dog there, Miss Brown in the background. Please
Oh,
forgive her.
that's okay.
Pastor, I'm on the air. the scammers and the telephone, the telemarketers there. At one point, because I try to be nice. I tell them I'm not buying anything. I'm not, but they still call back. Wisconsin call and Florida call. Calls from all over. Just I'm not, but it's every day too, and it's like you can't even finish your meal there. Telemarketers. So at what point should there be a national something to where it just plain becomes harassment, or just plain harassment, and it's an annoyance, but it's harassment is what it is. It's personal, public harassment on my infringing on my privacy, my solitude. So I hang up and I'll just listen to you over the air. Nice hearing your voice,
Yeah,
man. Thank
no,
you.
thanks for calling. I
Thank you.
appreciate your calling and appreciate your support. Yeah, now that's a good question. Maybe that should be another topic that we look into one of these days about what to do about those annoying calls, because it drives me nuts as well. I block, I hit the block, or just anything to try to get them to stop calling. I've tried to register my number on some do not calls, and I swear it seems like they call all the more. And it's even with the solicitations used to be mostly by mail, but even that's an annoyance. All the things that you get, whether it's written, whether it's the constant spam calls, or whether it's the constant, people calling trying to sell you insurance that you don't need, and you tell them 1,000 times and they just keep calling back. So I don't disagree with you. We may have to sidebar on that and come up with a solution. I don't know what it is, but yeah, something does need to be done. It is more than a source of annoyance. It can be a disruption to your day. And you, as like you said, your peace, your solitude, you're within your sanctuary trying to mind your own business. And here are people calling your phone, trying to either trick you into giving them money or whatever the case may be. It's a source of annoyance. I couldn't agree with you more. So yeah, side comment, but yeah, that's how I feel about that. So maybe I have to do a little research and see if there's any more that can be done. Um, so power of attorney number 5, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this one. Um, Power of attorney for healthcare. So POA-H is what I call it. POA-H, H being for healthcare, POA for power of attorney. It can be within the same document as your general power of attorney or durable power of attorney, but usually it's not. It's usually set forth in a separate document, in part because when you make a power of attorney for healthcare, you usually will give a signed copy of that to your doctor so they can put it on file at your medical office and have it there on file for you, in case anything were to happen. Then they can pull out the paperwork and see what was your directive and who should they call if you can't make decisions for yourself. All right, so the POA for H for healthcare allows someone else to make medical decisions on your behalf if you are unable to speak for yourself. Now, before I go any further, it occurs to me one thing that I didn't say. I kind of said it tangentially, but let me come right out and say this. For any of these power of attorney documents, and you name a person to be your agent to act on your behalf, it's always good, and I would say advisable, um, to choose a second person, a backup person. If your first person is unavailable, unwilling, or unable for some reason to be your agent, you would like to have a secondary person who's also named within that document. So that's something to think about before you create a document like this. Who are the two people that you trust? Name one and then, have the second person ready. So, all right, it looks like I talked so much, we've talked myself into a break. So we'll be back with more about the power of attorney for healthcare. Thank you so much for listening to Money Talks. Back to Money Talks with Attorney Coral. I am Attorney Coral Pleas and the host of the show, which is again sponsored by Columbia Savings and Loan. And so special thank you to Columbia Savings and Loan Association for sponsoring this show every week. So thank you so much for having me here and having me on the air. Um, we probably have time for one more caller if anyone would like to call in with a question or a comment or a concern. The number here is 414 444 5250. That is 414 444 5250 if you'd like to call in with any question, any comment, or any concern. I'm going to continue talking about power of attorney for healthcare. This is where we left off, and I was mentioning that it allows someone to make medical decisions on your behalf if you are unable to speak for yourself. I'm going to interrupt what I'm saying here because I invited the caller, and it looks like someone has called in. So I would like to go ahead and take that call and see if the person has a question or a comment or a concern. So it looks like we're holding. I'm gonna go ahead and keep talking. All right. What are the pros of having power of attorney for healthcare? Well, if you have a terminal illness, um, or if you suffer from a mental condition that makes or will make decision making difficult, if you are advanced in age, or if you have dependents or other relatives who you do not want to make such decisions, um, you've got to consider having a power of attorney for healthcare so that you can put the person in charge that you do think will be able to handle making tough decisions. Okay. It's kind of like with what we were talking about earlier with respect to just a general power of attorney or durable power of attorney. Same thing goes for healthcare. You want to choose the right person. Don't just go birth order. Get the person, choose the person that you believe is actually going to be able to make decisions, including tough decisions if they need to be made. Caller, please go ahead. Thank you so much for waiting.
Hi, I have a question. My mom just recently got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and there's no support. The state gave her a small budget, and sometimes I've been caring for her for 3 years, and the doctors initially stated that it was diabetes. So, um, with the budget, she does get, but if I want respite, that weekend takes up the whole state's the monthly budget.
Okay.
And,
So
and
you've
my,
got a situation where the resources are inadequate.
yes, and I am. Well, I thought I was a power of attorney because I got the paperwork while she was in the hospital because the hospital is so eager to put her in a nursing home, and I'm like, no. Like she's been going to the hospital, to be honest with you, maybe like 10 times in the last 3 years for different
Okay.
things. And the last time she went to the hospital, her blood sugar was high, a lot of other factors that contribute to the behaviors of a person with dementia. And
Oh, yeah, I think I've read about that. That sometimes the blood sugar can be an aggravating factor in that in terms of the
woo,
behavior.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, indeed.
Yeah. So those are frustrating concerns to have. I can only imagine. Do you live in the same city as your mom?
Well, and actually, she used to live by herself, so she lives with me now. And she was a wanderer. She did wander off 3 times, so I think that stage is over. But we're from Mississippi, and there's no like family is not what they used to be.
Yes.
So it's just me and my fiance and my daughter because my son has his own little girl. So it's really a struggle because people don't answer their phone if they think they need you.
Oh.
Need them rather.
Yeah, yeah, I understand, honestly, because I'm a caretaker as well. Fortunately, it's not to the state as you mentioned wandering because that's scary. That's when a person can take off and get lost or get hurt, those sorts of things. So I hope that that stage is past. just because of the fact of the vulnerability of the person that we're talking about. So yeah, it's hard. I wish I had some wise counsel for you on that. I think, but that's just a matter of working as closely as you can with whatever case manager may be involved to see if there's any additional support, maybe respite care or something, so you can have a break from time to time in terms of your caretaking. So I wish I had more to offer you on that, but that's what I would have to say.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for calling. Okay, there's one more caller we're going to be able to get today. Thank you, caller. Please go ahead.
Hi, my question is it really necessary to have a will when you have like a monthly income going into your bank account, a life insurance policy, or a vehicle or something of that nature? And also, I want to say thank you for this show. It's really very helpful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm happy to be of help. This is one of those questions that you may be right. It might not necessarily be necessary to have a will, but this is why I would just make the recommendation that you speak to either me or some other attorney directly that can give you some advice in terms of how to best facilitate that. My number again is 414-247-9570. Excuse me, if you'd like to reach out to me for a little more personal guidance on that, I will offer a free consultation to try to get you on your way. So please feel free to reach out. With that being said, I want to thank you for joining us, Money Talks with Attorney Coral, and a special thanks again to Columbia Savings and Loan Association for sponsoring the show. Everyone have a good week, and I'll be back next week. Thank you so much.